time to level up a few thousand degrees with a Lava Hot podcast and host Joseph Connell Jr. You'll hear from ordinary people who are doing extraordinary things, from tech startup CEOs and marketing professionals to authors, investors, and sales trainers. This show will be packed with information to help you level up in life or business, taking you from on fire up to lava hot.
Hello and welcome to the Lava Hot Podcast. I'm your host, Joseph Connell. Do you have an interest in multifamily real estate or just investing in real estate in general? Because if you do, you definitely found the right episode. Let me dive right into the guest that we have lined up for today. Carlos Salguero, I apologize, is a world-class business entrepreneur, real estate investor and mentor. He is known for moving from 0 units to 1,000 units inside of 12 months, increasing the value of the properties by over $7 million inside of 6 months. He has founded 4 multi-million-dollar businesses, and his latest ventures, CS3 Investments, is a multifamily investment firm with a goal of acquiring, get this, over $1 billion in real estate and assets over the next 7 years. Carlos, welcome to the show.
Joseph, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Yeah, you know, I've been following you on social media for I want to say 6 or 7 months, and the one thing I'll tell you is that when I first went down to the 10X headquarters for the marketing workshop, it was back in November of last year, and I actually think you were in the same class as me, the same marketing workshop. So very cool, but I'm very glad that we were able to connect. I think my people got linked up with your people to try to get this show to happen, and I've been watching what you've been doing by way of like the content you've been putting out there, the investments you guys have been talking about, and the ones you've been making. So I went, you know, I have an interest in real estate, so to have somebody on that is, you know, doing the deals and getting out there, and the fact that you also have, you know, a mentor group and a mentor community that you have that, you know, teaches people how to acquire real estate, you know, very impressive. But I want to start with the background of the businesses, just because I think you started the same way a lot of entrepreneurs do, where they get started. They start generating large chunks of cash, and then I want to segue into where we should start putting that money. You know, if we have that surplus, I mean, obviously there's a lot of places that we can invest in 2023. My hopes are you can break down why multifamily real estate would be the best place to go. But let's start with that. Let's start with the businesses that you've been able to build in that background, and then we'll start to progress into CS3.
That's awesome, man. Thanks so much again. Look, I was the first of my family to land in the U.S. when I was 17. I grew up dreaming about coming to this country, and my dad was, I think, a big dreamer himself, and one of his goals is for him to be here, but he never got to realize that dream. I was born in South America, in Quito, Ecuador specifically, and I grew up thinking, man, one day I'm going to go there, I'm going to maybe go to school there, and then who knows, maybe I'll get to stay. And I did come to college, so at 17 years old, I landed in Pueblo, Colorado. I got a couple degrees there at University of Colorado State, Pueblo it's called now. It was called the University of Southern Colorado back then. Mm-hmm. And, you know, after I got an engineering degree and a business degree, I decided to go get a job. I mean, like many of us, right? Let's go to college, go get a job, get an education, and go find security in a job. And what I realized once I started working for Hewlett-Packard as an intern first, because they wouldn't hire me with a paid salary because I didn't have any experience, right? They were hiring engineers, but they're like, you have 5 years of experience? And I'm like, no, then we can't hire you. It's like, what are you hiring for then? Oh, you can be an intern. How much do you pay? Nothing. All right, sign me up.
Yeah.
So started working there for free. 6 months later, they actually hired me. And that was back in the early 2000s. You were probably still in diapers then. So when I was kind of climbing the ranks, there was the dot-com bubble that bursted. And a lot of the big corporations like Hewlett-Packard started compressing, right? Started retreating. Yep. They were not hiring anybody. A lot of the engineers that had left to startups wanted to come back, and they said, no, we're not hiring back. So that created opportunity for me. I climbed the ranks very fast. I became an engineering manager there. And one of the things that happened, I was happy. I had a good job. I was working hard, traveling the world. But right when the recession hit, they started firing people. They started laying off people. And they turned me into a henchman. They handed me 50 pink slips one day and said, you need to fire 50 engineers in your team.
Wow.
And I'm like, wow, I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah.
I didn't know what the reasoning was other than we're cutting expenses, we're cutting costs, we're trying to prevent for the company to go under. You just have to do it. So, you know, I felt sick to my stomach. I was sad, I was depressed. And I was like, do I really need to fire these engineers that are double my age, have families, mortgages, people to take care of? And that was probably the turning point for me. At that point, I knew I needed to grab my life in my own hands and really go start something that I could control, that was not outside of my control. So that was really the spark that lit that desire in me to go start a business. And on the side, I started selling on the internet. I started selling on eBay, of all places, right? eBay was just getting started, so I started flipping stuff. I started flipping toner cartridges, servers, computers, and I realized, man, this is working. I'm making some money. What if I start spending more time? So, you know, I spent every waking hour trying to find good deals I could buy and sell on the internet. Within 9 months, I replaced my $250,000 salary at HP. Back in those days, that was a lot of money, and still is today. But I was like, you know what? I can do this on my own. And I left Hewlett Packard back in the early 2000s, stepped into my garage to flip on eBay, of all places. Everybody told me I was crazy, right? The people that knew me, that knew I worked at Hewlett Packard, said, man, you're leaving Hewlett Packard to go sell on eBay? Are you crazy?
Yeah, out of your garage? It's mad, right?
Garage. I mean, they just couldn't comprehend.
Yeah.
I even had some friends that said, man, the internet is just a fad, man. E-commerce is not here to stay. People want to go to the store and touch the stuff and look at the stuff. But you know what? I saw that it was the future. I saw that people over time would prefer the internet for shopping because of the convenience.
Right.
So, literally, I was early to that game. My eBay business grew. I became a power seller very, very fast. Then I started selling on Amazon right after, and I became also top 1% seller on Amazon very, very fast. Right. And I stuck with it, right? I was very, very dedicated. I was working 7 days a week, 365. I didn't always make money. You know, I bought stuff that I couldn't sell and I had to liquidate. So I had to learn the lessons on my own. But eventually I got it. And I started also going to hang out at masterminds and mentorships with other top e-commerce sellers. And that's really how I got started in the e-commerce business. Right. And after that, of course, my business grew and my needs for space grew. So I came out of my garage. I went into a little office. I rented a little warehouse space. Then I grew into a bigger warehouse space. And then eventually I'm like, you know what? I'm paying all this money to my landlord for everything. Maybe I should buy my own place.
Yeah.
And 10 years ago, I actually put an offer on a 50,000 square feet building that I still own today. And I scrambled every penny, man. Every penny. I didn't have the money for this deal, but I scrambled every penny that I could to put the down payment on that deal. I got an SBA loan from the Small Business Administration. Thank God I qualified. And I got this building, right? Big, big building. I was in a 10,000 square feet warehouse, and I went to a 50,000 square feet warehouse. I was like, man, can I even maintain this, right? Can I even do this, right? Scary moments, right? Eventually, all of us in business have to face that fear head on. For sure. And this was one of those moments where I had to say, you know what? I need to buckle up, and I need to just double down on my efforts. So I moved to the big warehouse. And you know, it was one of the best decisions I ever made, because I always say, right, you put a fish in a bigger fish tank, the fish grows with it. So that was me, right? Now that I had all this space, I started getting all these new ideas of how I could grow the business. And
Isn't that interesting how that works? Like once you have like this big commitment, sometimes it's that big commitment that actually pushes you forward. Like you have to have the big commitment to actually drive the activity that's going to be able to sustain the big commitment, right? Yeah. So 100%. I'm sorry, I'll let you keep going there, but
no, man,
but
100%,
just
right? So now that I had this big responsibility, and I started thinking, you know what? I have now this commercial real estate. How can I have a free warehouse? And that seemed like a wild idea. Yeah. But you know, I saw Amazon doing it. Amazon at that period of time was onboarding sellers onto their platform. And basically what you had to do is send inventory into Amazon and they will fulfill it for your orders. Mm-hmm. But that inventory incurred rent, incurred storage costs, incurred fulfillment costs. So I thought to myself, why don't I just copy Amazon and start welcoming clients that need my warehouse services, my fulfillment services, my inventory management services, and I charge them for it. And I went to an event where there was other e-commerce sellers, and I started telling people, hey, I have a warehouse. And one of them told me, you know what? I need a warehouse. I have 5 container loads landing in Long Beach, and I need a place to store them at. And I'm like, I'm open for business. And that's how I onboarded my first ever warehousing and fulfillment client. So that was the birth of my logistics and fulfillment business that became just a few years later a multi-million-dollar business. And guess what I got? A free warehouse.
Right.
Because now all those clients were sending inventory to my warehouse and they were paying by the cubic foot, right? So every box in my warehouse pays rent on a weekly basis by the cubic foot. So that wiped out all my expenses of me owning the building.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting right now, you know, where I'm shooting right now is our brand new studio. It's our podcast studio. It's our content creation office. You know, when we committed to this office, one of the first things I started thinking is, how do I get this space to pay for itself? Mm-hmm. So then I ended up launching 2 companies. One that I've already put out there, which would be podcastlaunchers.com. And the other one's going to be authoritylaunchers.com, because there's 2 different sides to it. One, I have this studio that I'm only using a fraction of the time when I'm in this space. So, you know, I figured, you know, I'm willing to bet I can find other young professionals like myself or individuals, business owners that would want to start a podcast. The cool thing is I do have the ability to help anybody from anywhere around the country with technology. It makes it very easy. But for those that actually want a physical studio, in this space, I have it laid out so that I could rearrange it and set it up so that anybody could come in and just start shooting a podcast tomorrow. Or if they want to just start it to shoot video content, let's say short form or long form, we have several designated areas to be able to have people come in, do a full-on shoot for an entire day, knock out, you know, a month to 6 months worth of your content, and we just package it up. And already we're starting to line up people that will fulfill and pay for this place. And then I have a free studio to myself. So it's crazy how, like, just again, that commitment, when you commit to something, you know, for me, it was, you know what, I need a better studio. I need an office. I need a space where I can create my own content. And then the creativity starts to happen. You know, how do I make, you know, increase revenue? How do I increase and get this place to pay for itself? And it's very cool to hear that you went through that other journey. Another thing that I picked up out of what you said, along the journey of you going through, whether it was the startup of e-commerce, as you really start to scale that out, or when you get into the spot of the fulfillment, you committed to additional learning, you know, going to masterminds, going to, you know, these organizations where you're paying for that knowledge. You're paying for an expedited course or whatever it is, very similar to what you're even offering now with the mentorship with the real estate. I'm a huge fan of investing in myself. You know, when I didn't go to college, out of high school, I just immediately got to work. But the one thing that, like, just got instilled in me is, you know, every time you invest in yourself, the returns are so significant. And I've just made it a point for myself to do that, to just, invest, whether it's, a training course with Cardone, books, masterminds. I feel like that is where the investments really have some solid compounds, and it's just insane. And then you also get to network with individuals that are doing things on such a large scale. But so you started by building this business on e-commerce, and then you evolved that into a fulfillment business for other individuals in that e-commerce space. Yes. And now I want to get to, and that got you to acquire a whole building that ended up being a free building. Now I want to get to where we are now, with CS3 Investments. I want to hear, where you guys are right now in terms of investments, and then I also want to hear a little bit about the mentor community that you have as well.
For sure. And one of the things, Joseph, that I was really doing at the time, remember, I bought this commercial building. For me, it was utilitarian in nature, right? I needed the building for my business. It was not something that I thought, look, I'm investing in this commercial space. It's going to be worth so much in the future, right? I didn't do any of that underwriting back then. But along the way, I started doing real estate as a hobby. As I had some extra cash, I bought single family homes. I did a couple Airbnbs. And then when I launched a supplement company on the internet as well, and that went tremendously well. I went from 0 to 8 figures in 18 months on Amazon and had an exit out of that company. Then I started having some of this capital that I was really not knowing how to put to work. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing that we sometimes don't learn, right? We learn how to make the money. We learn how to save the money sometimes. Some people don't know how to, but some of us do know how to save some money. Mm-hmm. But how to multiply money. Yep. That is the ultimate.
Get it, keep it, multiply it.
Right. So now I'm like, look, I have this cash. Let me look at what I've done that has provided the best results. So, I did some self-reflection. I look back and I said, this commercial building that I bought 10 years ago has appreciated 9 times what I paid for it.
Incredible.
And that was crazy, right? 9 times what I paid for it. So that for me was a big wake-up call. I was like, look, I have all this capital. I have all this potential here. I'm scared because it's losing value in the bank. Let me go invest in real estate. And like most of us, we want to start small. We want to start small, which is not the way to go. But I did. So I started buying a 4-plex. I started buying a triplex. I started buying the small stuff. Until, again, I had to go and grab a mentor and get into a room where people were doing big deals. Right. And that's how I landed at Grant Cardone's Summit, which is part of the community that you and I are part of. Yeah. And, for 3 days, Grant told me, you're thinking too small. You're not doing big enough deals. And that kind of reset in me, again, that switch of, yeah, man, I've already built several multi-million-dollar companies. Why do I have to start small in real estate as well? And right after that first event, I was convicted to come back and find a big deal that I could invest in. So back in July of 2021, I left that summit and I said, you know what? I'm not going to do anything under 50 units. And sure enough, I started searching and searching and searching. I found a beautiful $20 million deal in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, mixed-use asset with 54 units of luxury Class A units with 37,000 square feet of commercial space. And I went after it, man, with everything I got. Got it awarded, and we closed on the deal 5 months later. Incredible. And that's the deal that just in 7 months that we've owned it, the value has gone up between $7 and $9 million. That's because insane. I was able to go after a big deal. I could have never done that in a 4-plex. I could have never done that in a triplex. Just different levels, right?
Yeah, and what I'm curious, because if you're like me, you've probably read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, and in that series of books that Rich Dad puts out, in the ones about real estate investing, he talks about that, going through the paces of like trying to find property, and you're not going to find them instantly, that you have to do, this upfront work to try to find the right property. I'm curious, is it the same process? Is it just as hard to find a 50 unit, building as it is to find a quality residential property? It's the same work, same time, right?
Look, the level of effort is exactly the same.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah, it is exactly the same. It's just our mindset. It's like, if we think that we can only do this much, that's all you can do.
Yep.
Now, I almost think that the higher you go, the less the competition is. Because
you're absolutely right, I think.
There's probably 50 guys that want that fourplex at a discount.
Yeah.
There's probably only 5 guys that want to buy the $20 million deal that we're after. So your competition gets lesser the higher you go, but the effort is about the same. Now, the barrier there for a lot of people is the fear factor, right? It's like, oh, I've never done this. Should I really just jump to the big thing? Mm-hmm. And I can tell you, I had never bought a property that big. I had never underwritten a property that big.
Right.
I had to put myself in a position, again, going back to the analogy of your studio and my commercial warehouse, where I'm like, you know what? I'm going to commit first and figure it out later. Absolutely. And that was the best school of multifamily I could have. Not only because I had already a mentor that I could tap into and learn from, but you know what? There's no school like a real deal. A lot of folks try to get ready, and then take action. I was the other way around. I got the deal under contract, and then I started figuring out, okay, the loan. How do I get the cash to close? How do I do the due diligence? How do I underwrite this properly, right? And I was committed to make it work all along the way and take it to the finish line and get that deal closed.
Absolutely. So let me ask this. How important it was that shift in mindset of thinking bigger? Having Grant say, you have to think a lot bigger than you are. Like, how important was that part of it?
Look, I think that for me, that was a complete game changer. The reality is that had I not been at that event with a big thinker, with a billionaire, that was like creating all this pool, I would still be buying fourplexes right now.
Yeah, at the time of us recording this episode, just yesterday, Grant was on social media. I'm not sure if you saw it, but he was taking some heat from Barstool Sports. Did you see the article that they put out? Because he said something about how making $400,000 a year isn't enough. Like, it's not enough to be able to support your family, your community, your relatives, things like that. It's such a it's such a difference in the way that an individual thinks. Like, he's thinking in such a large scale, and he tries to get those around him to think so much bigger. And I just think that this episode and what you're saying is, you walked in and you're a successful guy that, you've been doing the right things and making revenue. And then you go around a billionaire and he says, you got to think bigger, and boom, inside of a year, you've got 50 units, a $20 million property, $20 million deal. And it's such an interesting take because of the Barstool Sport story that just came out yesterday. And those that like comment on it, like, cause I just scrolled through, it's like interesting because you could tell who follows Grant and who tries to think in that same mindset, and the ones that are, just have that mindset that is so limiting. And they're just not understanding where he's coming from. But, I love that. And that's why I was curious how important that part was.
And here, for me personally, is like, look, you can take it one of two ways, right? Mm-hmm. I can get defensive and I can say, look, man, who's he trying to tell me I'm already successful? I'm already making millions. I'm gonna stay on my lane and continue to do it at my pace or whatever, right? I can make excuses. Or I can humble myself, pay attention to somebody that has achieved so much more than me, and maybe listen for a little bit.
Yeah.
And take the attitude of a student and say, you know what? There's something in there that I can pick up from. And
Absolutely.
when somebody stretches you, it's always going to be uncomfortable. There's always going to be a little bit of pain in there.
Absolutely.
And you either take it and you grow into that and you face it head first, or you go and retreat. And that's really the thing. When they tell us things that we don't like to hear, we only have two options. We're like, you know what? Here's my excuse for why I'm not going to do that, which is probably what the Barstool thing was all about.
Yep.
Or, you know what? There's something here. How about we go and try to think bigger and see what happens?
Yep.
What's the downside of trying to go bigger? Maybe
Right.
you fail, right? Maybe you swing that bat and you strike out. So what? You go back to the small stuff, right? Doesn't matter. But
Absolutely.
what if it works?
Yeah. And you know, it's interesting, even in that humbling, like, you know, I think that if individuals were to actually like listen to what he says, even in his response to it, Grant he's got to be one of the most humbled billionaires I've ever seen, because he will constantly say, you know, I'm almost there. Like, I've almost made it. Like, even with what he's achieved in his mind, it still hasn't scratched the surface of what his full potential is. And I think at the core of it, ultimately, I think that's what he tries to do, is try to lift people up and understand, look, there's a whole nother layer to potential. You know, he sees it in me, a guy from Ocean City, Maryland. He saw it in Carlos when he says, hey, you've got to think bigger. He probably looked at you and was like, this guy could achieve so much more, and pushed you to want to think of real estate a little bit differently, from what I'm gathering. But I want to shift it over into the area of the conversation where I think it would be important for listeners to explore increasing their knowledge. So I want to talk about the mentor group that you have. You know, is this an active group where you're constantly looking for people that are looking to be mentored, or, you know, is it like a closed group? Tell me all about it.
Yeah, look, shortly after I started acquiring these big properties and I started posting about it, you know, telling my inner circle about it and my family, everybody else, I started getting a lot of hits on social media. Hey, would you mentor me? Would you show me how? How did you get started? How did you make this happen? I knew you when you were in e-commerce. Now you're doing multifamily, big deals. What happened, right? How did it become? So I'm like, you know what? I came back. I went to another 10X event. I went to the Stages 10X event. And
I just got back from that.
Oh, man. So you're fresh, right?
Yep.
So you know exactly what I'm talking about. I came back and I told my team, guys, you know what? I think it's our obligation, our duty, that the success that we've had, we start teaching other people. Because what if we can help just a handful of individuals go acquire some of these big deals, acquire some of these properties that is not any harder than acquiring a small property? What if we do that? So we quickly created a mentorship program based on exactly what I've done. And we laid it out. It's 16 weeks, and we take people by the hand, teaching them every single detail about how to do multifamily real estate. And, you know, we started promoting it. We started offering to people. Our first graduating class had 30 people in there. And what's so exciting is that inside that room, that very, very hungry room of people, already teams have formed, partnerships have been created. And we closed our first 40-unit deal with my students not even 3 weeks ago, out of that one group. Now, these guys that are in my mentorship didn't even have a single-family home before starting the mentorship. Now they skipped the line, man. They went from having no commercial properties of their own to now owning a 40-unit apartment complex in Tennessee. Incredible. That we closed. And get this, we got a 5-year interest-only loan from the seller at 3%.
Wow.
Right? Which doesn't even exist right now.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Now sometimes that's the whole value, is like getting in a room with believers that can take you from, you know what, let's get you thinking a little bigger. Let's expand your reach so that instead of you thinking about a fourplex and house hacking the fourplex because you live in one unit and you rent the three, how about you go buy a 40-unit deal that cash flows $1 million a year?
Right. Absolutely. I want to ask a question about the one deal that you did where you I'm trying to recall how much you increased the value by.
Yeah. It's our Gateway Village. It's called the Gateway Village in Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
Okay. And you increased the value of that by how much?
$9 million.
$9 million. How does one acquire a property and increase the value by $9 million? How does that work?
Yeah, great question, man. So look, when we saw the property, it's a mixed-use property. What that means is it has residential in the top 3 floors, and it has businesses in the first floor. It's a 3-building configuration, kind of looks like a courtyard in the middle. If you guys go to YouTube and Google the Gateway Village in Murfreesboro, you'll see it. Beautiful property, Class A asset right in front of a hospital. When we found the deal, I underwrote it. I paid 4 people to underwrite it just because I thought, man, my numbers are too good. Let me go, confirm with other people.
Right.
And I compare notes. And, I saw that there was at least $200 of rent upside in the residential units. And the developer who owned this building and developed it, and by the way, still lives at the property, he's my tenant, had just organically filled up the commercial space, meaning no real marketing, no real promotion, never really engaged a lot of brokers to lease up the space. So there was 66% of commercial vacancy in the building, when the area around it, the market vacancy for Murfreesboro, Tennessee, was 4%. So catch that delta. 66% vacant, 4% vacancy in the market. What does that tell you? It's like, man, there's something here, right? And it's just that it was the best kept secret of the town. Nobody really knew about it. So we close the deal, we get in there, and first of all, we start raising rents on the residential space. And we realize that the $200 bump was not enough. So I tell my team, hey, why don't we try 300? Boom, another lease. Why don't we try 400? Boom. Why don't we try to start charging for parking and storage, because they were not charging for parking and storage.
Yeah.
And we started signing leases with parking and storage. So all in all, we started increasing the rents by $450. So that gives you a huge swing in your income.
Absolutely.
And then we start marketing the commercial space. And because it's super close to the hospital, right in front of a high traffic street, right? Just the cross streets where our deal are. One street has 30,000 cars a day. The other one has 55,000 cars a day. Incredible commercial space right in front of the hospital. We start promoting it, picking up the phone, calling people, saying, hey, are you interested in renting here? And we end up finding 3 commercial tenants. One of them is a nail salon, a med spa, and the third is an F45 fitness franchise. And all of those leases, we started signing at $29 per square feet average, triple net, which means that the tenant pays for all the expenses, the taxes, the insurance, the common area. So in 7 months that we've been operating the deal, we went up in rents about $450 average, and we went and grabbed 3 new commercial tenants that are paying us $29 per square feet average. All that extra income goes to the net operating income, which increases the value of the deal, and that's how the value of that deal has blown up. And Joseph, I still have another $10 million or so of value that I have to go grab, because I still have a few commercial units that are available. So I'm
Wow,
super
incredible.
excited for 2023.
Right. So I have two questions specific to that deal. One, you said that one was in Tennessee, correct?
Correct.
Yep. And you are in Colorado?
Yes.
Yep. So I think that's one interesting thing, because I think most people probably think of like these geographical limitations that, oh, if I'm in Colorado, I got to find properties in Colorado. You're out there looking for good deals no matter where they may be, and you find one that's several states away, right?
Yes.
Yep. So I was curious, did you have that same maybe thought process at first that, okay, I got to find deals right here? Because all the books I've ever read about real estate, especially in single family, is you want to look close to your home. You want to be close in proximity. It's a total different thing. This is way bigger deals in completely different states, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Look in your backyard, right? That's what everybody will tell you when doing real estate.
Yeah.
And I did that. I looked in Colorado. I walked a ton of deals. I underwrote some deals, and I just couldn't find anything that cash flowed and I was happy with.
Right.
So I started expanding out of my area, and I started looking in places that I had contacts in.
Yep.
So I have a very good friend of mine and partner in Nashville, Tennessee, and that's why I started looking in Tennessee. That's why I started looking in Texas, in Georgia, in Florida. And really, because of these big deals require management and a property management company, it was good for me that the deal was not next door to me, because that almost forces you to find a good management team that will run the deal with excellence.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that I did that was one of the best decisions I've done when it comes to managing deals is I found somebody that I could mentor that will live at the property, that will get a salary, and that will basically, I would coach every single day, and that we will go through a list of things to have this property perform to the best of the ability. So on top of the property management company that I hired, I put an asset manager on site to watch the manager and provide an extra level of accountability. I think that's one of the keys of our success of operating deals, because we have somebody that is very, very committed to the deal. Right. Many times they even earn equity in the deal after a certain amount of time. So they start acting like an owner, and they're watching the property manager to make sure that, they're not resting on their laurels after they get a little bit of success, but that they're pushing the business plan, and that we're growing the income, controlling the expenses, and just boosting the value of the asset.
Absolutely. Well, Carlos, as we start to wrap up this episode, I want to say, one, I love this episode. I think it covers a very important topic. I think it goes through several paces of, that initial growth, and then the ultimate towards the end, the thinking bigger, and then the commitment and putting in the actions that go with that commitment. But as I wrap up this episode, I want to encourage everybody to be able to go follow you, to connect with you if they want to look into the mentor community, or if they're interested in, how do I invest with this guy? Where should they go to try to connect with you?
Look, you should follow me on Instagram. My handle is IamCarlos10X. That's on Instagram, on TikTok, or any other social media platform. If you want to learn more about our mentorship program, go to our website. It's IamCarlos10X.com. Very easy to remember. And then if you want to invest in one of our deals, right now we have a gorgeous deal in Tennessee, very similar to the other one. It's also mixed use, 138 units, Class A, beautiful asset with 21,000 square feet of commercial space on the first floor. Go to cs3investments.com. You can find all about it.
Absolutely. And for those listening, if you go to lavahotpodcast.com, if you search for Carlos, you'll see pretty much everything there. We'll have a full bio built out for him. We'll have links to his social media. We'll have links to the websites, and everything else that you would need to be able to try to connect with Carlos. But yeah, with that, Carlos, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to come on and drop some knowledge on us. And, you know, I am very pleased to hear the success that you've been having, and there's no doubt in my mind that it's just going to continue to compound from there. I'm willing to bet that with your mindset and the tenacity that you have, that you're probably going to hit that $1 billion a lot sooner than 7 years. I just have that hunch. So
thank you, man. I receive it, man. I
Yes,
want
sir.
that to happen. And look, Joseph, one of my big dreams along the way was not only to make a lot of money. I think a lot of us think about that, right?
Right.
Entrepreneurial and ambitious. But I wanted to bring along a lot of people with me. And that's why we started the mentorship program. That's why I love multifamily so much, because I can't do it by myself. When I find an amazing deal that makes sense, cash flows, and has all this growth potential, I have to go find investors that want to put their money at work. So it gives me an opportunity to say, hey guys, you want to board this train? Let's go to success, right?
Absolutely.
Let's go together, and maybe give opportunity to people that otherwise wouldn't have the chance to even be part of some of these deals. Because you and I know this multifamily real estate investing is not very widespread out there, right?
Right.
Look, in 20 years of being in business and having very successful companies, I was never once pitched to go be part of a multifamily real estate investment.
Right.
I wish somebody along the way would have said, hey, Carlos, did you know that you can buy apartments with somebody else? I'm like, I would have listened. I would have said, really? I had no idea that me, Carlos, barely coming up, could ever buy one of these big deals.
Right.
So I know that there's thousands of people out there that you and I can reach with the message of, you know what, real estate investing is for everybody, and you don't have to stay small. You can go big, and you can partner with somebody that already knows what they're doing and get invested in these big deals and start creating some passive income and maybe even generational wealth for your family.
Absolutely. I love it. Absolutely. Well, Carlos, I appreciate you taking the time to come on. And, you know, my gut tells me I'm going to have to get my wife to line it up with your team. But, you know, as we get into season 2, actually, let me scratch that. This episode technically is part of season 2, but at some point I know we're going to have you back on the show and to hear how this next deal goes. And definitely would like to hear where you are in the pursuit of that $1 billion in assets.
That's awesome, man. Thanks so much for having me, Joseph.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Lava Hot Podcast with Joseph Connell Jr. Do you want to level up your business? Then visit us at golavahot.com for a free marketing analysis.